When my phone buzzed at work that afternoon, I almost ignored it. The number on the screen belonged to my neighbor, someone who didn't usually call unless something serious was happening. I stepped outside to answer, thinking it might be a small favor or a quick update about our quiet street. Instead, her voice came through urgent, almost panicked. She said there was a moving truck in my driveway, and strangers were hauling boxes into my house as if they belonged there. At first, I thought she must have been mistaken. I hadn't hired movers, I hadn't rented out my place, and I certainly hadn't authorized anyone to be there. My stomach dropped, and 1,000 questions raced through my head. Who was moving into my house? Why was there a truck parked in my driveway? And how could this be happening while I was at work? The drive home felt endless. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. With every mile, my mind raced through possibilities. Maybe it was a break-in, maybe someone had scammed me out of my home, or maybe my own family had something to do with it. The idea wasn't as far-fetched as it sounded. Growing up, I was often treated like what I had belonged to everyone else. I was always expected to give, to share, to sacrifice. My sister was handed things without question, while I had to fight for every scrap of recognition. And even as an adult, those expectations lingered. My parents often implied that since I was doing well, I owed it to others to make their lives easier. They never saw the late nights, the discrimination I fought against at work, or the way I had to claw for every opportunity because of the color of my skin. All they saw was what I had, and to them, it was fair game. When I finally turned onto my street, my heart slammed in my chest. The neighbor hadn't been exaggerating. A massive moving truck sat squarely in my driveway. Its back door rolled up as men carried furniture and boxes inside my home. My home. I parked so fast my tires screeched against the curb, and I nearly stumbled as I ran toward the house. The movers barely glanced at me, as if I were the intruder instead of them. I demanded to know what was going on, and that's when I saw her, my sister, standing in my living room, giving orders about where to place her couch, her dining table, her children's toys. She turned around and her face lit up, not with guilt, but with a smug sort of satisfaction, as though she had been waiting for me to walk in on her little victory. She told me, as casually as if it were already decided, that she and her family were moving into my house. She said our parents had promised her the space because her kids deserved better, because their apartment was too small, and because I, in their words, had more than enough. I felt my blood run cold. My sister didn't even apologize for not asking me. She didn't hesitate or stumble over her words. She acted like she was entitled to my property, like it was hers by right, simply because she wanted it. My parents showed up minutes later, smiling as though this was some kind of joyous family occasion. My mom hugged my sister and patted her back, praising her for finally getting a real home. My dad gave me a look that said he expected me to fall in line. And when I asked what gave them the right to make decisions about my house, they looked at me with disappointment, as if I were the unreasonable one. The injustice burned inside me. For years, I had tolerated being treated as less, but this was different. This was my home, bought with years of sacrifice, hard work, and perseverance despite being overlooked, underestimated, and judged in every professional space I had stepped into. I had endured comments about not belonging, fought against promotions given to people less qualified, and spent years proving my worth in a world that never wanted to see me succeed. And now, even in my own family, I was being told my success didn't belong to me. It was as if all my struggles, all my victories, meant nothing in their eyes. The argument escalated fast. My parents accused me of being selfish, of forgetting where I came from, of turning my back on family. They reminded me of every small favor they had done for me growing up, conveniently forgetting how they had failed me in bigger ways. They said I should be grateful to help my sister, that her children needed space to grow, and that my refusal made me cruel. My sister, standing tall in my living room, smirked as if she knew they were on her side, confident that I would cave under the pressure as I always had. But this time I didn't bend. I told them to get out. My voice shook, but I didn't back down. The movers paused, looking uncertain, and I repeated myself louder, demanding they remove the boxes and furniture they had already brought in. My parents exploded with anger, calling me heartless, ungrateful, and cold. My sister's face twisted into outrage, and she accused me of destroying her children's future. The tension was so thick it felt like the walls were closing in around me. But I held my ground. This house was mine, and I wasn't about to let years of struggle be erased by their entitlement. Eventually, after threats, tears, and accusations, they left. The movers hauled her things back onto the truck, and my parents stormed out with promises that I would regret this decision. The house was quiet again, but the silence was heavy, filled with the echoes of everything they had said. In the following days, the phone calls poured in. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in months reached out, parroting my parents' narrative. They told me I was selfish, that I had more than enough and should have shared, that I was tearing the family apart over just a house. But none of them had been there when I was working 2 jobs to save for the down payment. None of them had been there when I was passed over at work, fighting to prove myself. None of them had been there when I signed the papers and finally held the keys in my hands, knowing what it had cost me to get to that point. And none of them had the right to take that away. The hardest part wasn't their anger. It was the realization that to them, my hard work would never truly belong to me. They saw me as a resource, not a person. My success was just another thing they felt entitled to claim, dressed up as family obligation. But standing in that house, looking out at the lake in the evening light, I felt something shift. For the first time, I wasn't crushed by their disapproval. I was proud of myself for finally saying no. Proud that I had defended what I had earned, even when it meant being cast as the villain in their story. And that's when I understood the truth. Sometimes, protecting what you've built means disappointing people who think they own you. Sometimes, saying no means being called cruel, selfish, or heartless. But cruelty isn't refusing to give away the life you fought to create. Cruelty is believing you're entitled to someone else's sacrifice just because you share their blood. So I ask you this. When the people who should love you most demand that you give up everything you've worked for, who's really being cruel? The one who protects what's theirs, or the ones who try to take it away?